The U.S. financial markets keep crashing, and investors are blaming Donald Trump. Hello, everybody. David Schuster reporting. The trend line here at the end of 2024 has been horrific. The markets have been nosediving, and now even the Federal Reserve, which sets bank borrowing rates, is adding to the fears about Trump. Recently, it all led to this.
Tonight, the financial markets are reeling from another big sell-off. The Dow plunged more than 1,100 points. It's now fallen for 10 straight days, something that had not happened in 50 years. The Nasdaq fell by more than 3.5%, and the S&P nearly 3%.
The latest drop came in the wake of a decision by the Federal Reserve to lower rates once again, which it does when inflation is going down. However, this time, there was also a warning. Here's part of the report on CBS News.
So as expected, the Federal Reserve cut rates today by 1/4 of a point, bringing down the key borrowing rate. But what tanked the market was investors' concern about what Chairman Powell had to say about 2025.
And what Powell said is that the Fed expects inflation under the Trump administration to go up. And the Fed chair pointed out that Donald Trump's plans have triggered a lot of economic uncertainty. So instead of being aggressive with rate cuts in 2025, which would essentially heat up the economy, members of the Federal Reserve are taking their foot off of the gas thanks to Trump inflation fears.
They're writing down more uncertainty around inflation. The point about uncertainty is it's kind of common sense thinking that when the path is uncertain, you go a little bit slower. It's not unlike driving on a foggy night or walking into a dark room full of furniture. You just slow down, and so that may have affected some of the people.
Yes, the chairman of the Federal Reserve just compared Donald Trump's economic policies to driving on a foggy night or walking into a dark room full of furniture. In other words, the Fed expects Trump could cause an economic catastrophe. So instead of heating up the economy with lower rates, the Fed now expects to possibly need to cool down Trump's inflation. Investors and traders did not like what they heard from Powell, and it added to the existing pessimism that many analysts already have about Donald Trump's impact on the U.S. economy. Donald Trump is promising to carry out mass deportation starting on day one of his 2025 administration. But deporting even a fraction of the estimated 11 million undocumented migrants would cost U.S. law enforcement hundreds of billions of dollars. When the U.S. government borrows and spends that kind of additional money, inflationary pressures soar. Also, Trump is planning to cut taxes for the wealthy and lower the corporate tax rate. According to economic experts, those efforts would also balloon the deficit and spark inflation. But there is every indication that Donald Trump does intend to increase the budget deficit. One of the latest indications came from congressional negotiations over a budget bill to keep the government funded. Trump demanded the bill include a provision that lifts the debt ceiling. And because the first negotiated bill did not have that provision, Donald Trump instructed Republicans to kill it.
Trump tells our chief Washington correspondent, John Karl, there will be a government shutdown unless Congress eliminates or extends the debt ceiling.
So just to be clear here to our viewers, at the same time that Donald Trump and Elon Musk are railing against this bill for including too much spending, he's also asking Congress to increase the amount that he can borrow, because what he knows is that it would be very politically difficult when he takes office, when Congress is fully controlled by Republicans. It would be very difficult politically for that debt ceiling issue to be addressed, so he wants it to get done while President Biden is still in office.
The second negotiated resolution to fund the government includes what Donald Trump wants.
We now have the text of an agreement to the government spending bill, and it does include extending the current debt ceiling. It was going to be expiring in January of 2025. This piece of legislation would extend it for another 2 years into January of 2027. That takes a huge lift off the shoulders for Republicans next year, who are looking at a difficult battle to reauthorize it. Also just gives a little bit more breathing room, not having to worry about that fiscal cliff for a little bit longer.
So next year in 2025 and the following year in 2026, it appears Donald Trump will not have to worry about debt ceilings blocking his policy plans. And again, those deficit-busting plans include tax cuts for the wealthy, which would cut back on government revenues, and deporting migrants, which would require new government spending. More spending, less revenue means higher deficits. Economists say that's a financial ticking time bomb that could wreck the economy. Inflation, of course, could also torch the economy by raising prices, increasing unemployment, and sparking consumer chaos. And again, the Federal Reserve bankers are now saying there is a greater chance in 2025 of inflation than not. And Donald Trump still hasn't taken office yet. So just the fears and anticipation of what Trump is going to do are already dragging down the markets and causing investors to get more anxious and skittish. Remarkable. During the 2024 presidential campaign, Donald Trump promised to fix an economy that was broken. But by nearly every measure, stock market growth, working wages outpacing inflation, gross domestic product, job creation, low unemployment, and more, the U.S. economy was solid. And all the data shows that since the pandemic ended, the U.S. economy has performed better and outpaced every other country in the world, including with lower inflation than every other country in the world. But Donald Trump convinced tens of millions of Americans the economy needed to be fixed. So in 2025, Donald Trump is going to fix an economy that is not broken by tanking it. And even the markets are starting to panic. Congratulations, Trump voters. The inflation and economic misery that is coming are on you.
I did have dinner with Tim Cook. I had dinner with sort of almost all of them, and the rest are coming. And this is one of the big differences, I think, between, we were talking about it before, one of the big differences between the first term. In the first term, everybody was fighting me. In this term, everybody wants to be my friend. I don't know. My personality changed or something.
Your power levels changed. I think that's what happened. And the opposing political party, the Democrats, have embarrassed themselves dramatically in this past election. So with that in mind, let's talk a little bit about Donald Trump now suddenly thinking that billionaire tech CEOs meeting with him and being nice to him means that they want to be his friend. No, quid pro quo. Quid pro quo. And look, I suspect that Trump knows that, but I don't know. Let me give you the details and maybe you guys can decide for yourself. So last night, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos had dinner with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago, despite previous feuds between all three of them. Okay, Elon Musk in the past has said terrible things about Trump. Obviously, Jeff Bezos has said terrible things about Trump as well, but things are changing. So that makes Musk and Bezos just two of a whole slew of these tech executives essentially courting Donald Trump and shelling out donations in the hopes of getting on his good side. And so you're seeing a graphic that lists just some of them right now. You have the TikTok CEO, Shao Chu. You have Apple CEO, Tim Cook, AKA Tim Apple, of course. Google CEO, Sundar Pichai. You have Meta CEO, Mark Zuckerberg. You guys get the picture, okay? Some people that I should probably know, but I'm not familiar with. But nonetheless, after this wine and dine session last night, he once again bragged about his new circle of friends, saying, "Everybody wants to be my friend," in all caps.
Why do you write that? Why do you write that?
But they want him to push through deregulation and tax cuts, and something Jeff Bezos made perfectly clear just a few weeks ago at the New York Times' Deal Book Summit. Take a look.
If we're talking about Trump, I think it's very interesting. I'm actually very optimistic this time around that we're going to see. I'm very hopeful about this. He seems to have a lot of energy around reducing regulation. And my point of view, if I can help him do that, I'm going to help him, because we do have too much regulation in this country. There's so many advantages here, but we are burdened by excessive permitting and regulation. You can't build a bridge and all these things. You know what they are. We see these examples all the time. We need to be able to build solar fields and everything else.
So you're optimistic.
I'm super optimistic
about this president. And the reason I ask is because
I'm very optimistic that President Trump is serious about this regulatory agenda, right. And I think he has a good chance of succeeding.
I love how one of the richest men in the world is like, if he wants to do away with regulations, I want to help him. I bet you do, buddy. I bet you do. Now, it seems as though Bezos had to work pretty hard to get around Elon Musk at last night's dinner. So Liba Nisis, a reporter and lawyer who was at Mar-a-Lago, said she witnessed Bezos on a mission to win Trump over before Musk arrived unceremoniously around 50 minutes later, catching his fellow billionaire off guard and making him uncomfortable like he had been
C-blocked.
I know. You guys know what that means. I can't say it. Clock blocked.
Clock blocked, because he was on the clock, and and you
guys get the picture.
Okay, and he took some of his time.
Yeah.
That's good, actually. I like that. All right, so the folks that we showed you earlier, those are actually the very top business leaders in the world these days, because those are all like the Silicon Valley rules the world now, and that's pretty much all of Silicon Valley, including the AI companies all the way to Netflix, right? So Trump's a funny guy because I think he probably means both of these things in this case. Like in the old days, we told you about how Trump used to go to these parties of super rich people and he wanted to fit in. And he once told a story of a guy who had lost all his money and then everybody thought he was embarrassing and that was like his worst fear of all time. And he, whenever someone more wealthy than him was coming to one of his parties, he's like, Steve Wynn's gonna be here, Steve Wynn's gonna be here. So this whole, everyone loves me now, everyone wants to be my friend, is partly that, and that's the funny part and the slightly embarrassing part, or maybe really embarrassing. Anyway, but the other half is, I know what he's saying. He's saying like, funny how everybody wants to be my friend now.
Yeah, no,
right?
Totally. I think, look, I honestly think it's more that than, the prior, like the previous thing.
I think it's both, but I hear you.
But also at the same time, I think you're probably right that it's a little bit of both, because look, the one thing that we've been saying about Trump over and over again is that he desires admiration, he desires validation. And so he probably feels really good about the fact that these billionaires who had previously said terrible things about him are now coming around and buddying up to him. Sucking up to him because they want favors. Let's keep it real.
Of course, and they don't want to be burned by Trump. So what they're doing is super rational. So even though we might find it distasteful, so in the beginning, why did a lot of these guys oppose him in the beginning? Because the business world hates instability. So when the establishment is in charge, they know exactly what they're gonna get. They're gonna get the status quo, which they love because they're already at the top. They're gonna get some tax cuts where they play these good cop, bad cop games.
Right.
They're gonna get some deregulation. They're largely in charge. Would they like more tax cuts? Would they like more deregulation? Sure, but they could live with the status quo. The status quo has been wonderful to them, right? So they don't want a bull in a china shop like Trump. But now that he won, they go, okay, first of all, this guy's a little bit dangerous, and so I gotta get on his good side so he doesn't punish me, because he has threatened to punish Amazon because of what Washington Post wrote, because Bezos also owns Washington Post, as an example, but he's really done that with a lot of people. So if you don't care about morality, you don't care about the country, you don't care about anything but your fiduciary responsibility to maximize profit for your company, you'd be nuts not to go talk to Trump if you're them, right? Because billions and billions of dollars are on the line. So that they want to protect against the downside, but now they realize, as Bezos just told you, oh, there's some good upside in these hills. This guy's gonna get rid of all the regulation. I don't have to protect my workers anymore. I don't have to protect the community anymore. I don't have to protect the environment. I don't have to protect anything. I just run amok. We're in Mad Max world now, okay? So these guys love that.
Yeah, they do.
And so they realize, especially with Elon doing what he did, they're like, oh, you just go pay him and then you get whatever you want.
Yeah.
Genius, Elon. So they were all going to say, oh, kiss up. There's two ways you pay. One is compliments. You're amazing. You're the best one of us all, okay? And the second is,
you're kind of like a smart person.
Yeah, you're like a very stable genius. And the second thing is that you fund his inauguration, you send him more money, you promise him goodies, and then he's gonna give you giant tax cuts and deregulation.
He's very, very transactional. Trump is incredibly transactional. So that's why I say quid pro quo. I mean, that's the way he operates. Now, with that in mind, there are some who are getting very frustrated with Elon Musk essentially serving as a gatekeeper to Donald Trump. And so apparently after his last minute decision to kill Mike Johnson's continuing resolution to fund the government, there's a lot of anger about Elon Musk and his role in the upcoming Trump administration. And in fact, Trump administration hasn't even begun, and Elon Musk clearly already has a lot of influence. And so here's Maggie Haberman explaining how frustrated people are feeling. Take a look.
Certainly, Elon Musk has an enormous amount of influence, at least in communicating for Donald Trump. I don't know how much of this is Elon Musk whispering in Trump's ear versus other people whispering in Trump's ear, and Musk is being, vocally against this particular piece of this bill. It does speak about the fact that Elon Musk is going to be a very powerful ally for Trump. It's also raising concerns for some Republicans I've been talking to over the last couple of hours. What does this look like for those legislative priorities, such as extending the tax cuts, such as, any number of things that Trump wants to try to enact and that he has campaigned on? What does this look like for actually competently, and functionally running a government?
Now, as we all know from Donald Trump's first term, he doesn't take kindly to these narratives that he's not the one in charge. And so immediately, his team fought back against this narrative. A Trump spokesperson weighed in. Caroline Leavitt says, Elon, in regard to the allegations that Elon Musk is the real leader, she says, as soon as President Trump released his official stance on the continuing resolution, Republicans on Capitol Hill echoed his point of view. President Trump is the leader of the Republican Party, full stop. So.
Yeah, and Trump also put out a statement saying, because here, let me just back up so you know the timeline here. On the budget, Elon first tweeted saying this is unacceptable and we're not gonna let this pass. Then Trump came out and said the same thing, but now it got awkward because it looks like Elon's in charge. So Trump in his statement said, I had already given Elon permission to say what he said. I'm like, all right, brother, maybe. Okay. Or maybe he said that and then it was awkward and et cetera. So look, is Elon playing with fire here? Are we soon going to get a Trump going, very disappointed with my head of Doge? Okay.
Maybe.
Could.
You never know.
But look, I'm going to keep it real. So this, I don't think you'll hear this in mainstream media. I don't think you'll hear it in left-wing media at all, and I'm not sure you'll hear it in right-wing. Anyway, so there are people who are incentivized to make sure that they do split. So they're going to press on that wound. So there's a lot of Democratic congressmen coming out now, Dan Goldman and others going, oh, who's really in charge? And they're trying to get under Trump's skin so that they break that bond. And so whenever you've got a strong team, the other side always tries to create dissension and break them apart. So the reason why I'm skeptical that Trump is going to throw Elon, under the bus, is because Elon holds a lot of cards. He has a tremendous amount of money that he could use to help Trump in a lot of contexts. Plus, Elon has X, and X is driving a lot of the messaging, right? So if that messaging turns against Trump, well, that hurts Trump. So it's not like Elon's like Sessions, where he can just throw him under the bus and Sessions can't do anything about it. His former attorney general in his first term, right? So that's why this is a little bit of a tango here. Trump doesn't hold all the power. Elon does hold some significant power. And then finally, what I'd be super curious about is if they separate, can Elon swing the MAGA guys on X against Trump? Is that possible? Or do the MAGA guys on X rebel against Elon Musk? I don't know. I don't know if we're gonna find out. On the other hand, 4 years of Trump staying an ally of someone, that is super hard.
Yeah, I mean,
when it's a personality this big,
yeah,
and that has his own independent thoughts and ambitions and agenda.
A lot of egos.
Yeah, those two egos, man. If they make it the whole 4 years, it'll be amazing.